Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Vader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to speak with Charlton Keultjes. And Charlton is a professional EOS implementer. And if you've been listening to the show at all, you've heard the term EOS come up. It's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Came from a book called Traction, written by Gino Wickman. And it comes up so often with clients I work with. So many distributors, a couple manufacturers I know have adopted this methodology for operating a business. And, it's really brought clarity, and it's brought all kinds of great ways that they can save time, just become much more efficient, and, really not get as frustrated with the business. And I know, and Charlton and I are going to dive into this a little bit, but I have had so many clients over the years, reach out and say, I'm not sure exactly what's going on in the business. I'm not sure what's wrong, but something feels off. And I think that's this ideal opportunity to bring in a structure like EOS and work with a professional implementer to get you there so that it does start to make sense and you can identify those barriers and work through them. So anyway, as I said, I've been hearing about EOS for so many years, and so many people bring it up that I just had to bring in somebody who really knew what they were doing and knew what they were talking about. So had a pleasure, speaking with Charlton about this, and I really hope you all enjoy this episode. This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSQL Distribution Software. InSQL is a fully functional distribution-based software package. I say distribution-based because that's important. Many alternatives out there say they do distribution, but they really aren't very good at it. They're generally watered-down manufacturing packages with a few distribution features tacked on. I only recommend software packages that were purpose-built to serve distribution. And these folks do it very well at a price point many smaller distributors can afford. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSQL Distribution Software at www.insql.com. That's INXSQL.com. Well, hey, Charlton, welcome to Distribution Talk. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. My pleasure. The big reason I wanted to ask you to come on the show is a good friend of a mutual friend of ours, Jordan New, introduced us. And I'm telling you, I can't go a month. I can't even go a couple of weeks before a client I'm working with, a distributor, somebody, or even manufacturers for that matter, talk about EOS. And this whole operating system, and we'll dive into that completely. But before we do that, if we could talk about your background and kind of how you kind of came along this journey. So take it away.
Yeah. So name's Charlton Keultjes. Perhaps medium-sized story of this is I ran a privately held company for about a decade and started there as replacing a longtime CFO, became operational, strategic. And then we lived through, I think, a lot of the problems that most companies have. One of the things I talk about a lot is we would have these weekly meetings, Monday mornings, that would last anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. And they were the same every week. Update meetings. And I would be walking out the door and you're thinking, oh my goodness, did we just go through a time warp? Because I swear we talked about the same things last week, right? So everybody's facing a ton of issues. Every leader of any company, right? We're wearing a ton of hats and doing a ton of great stuff, but it is so frustrating when you're dealing with the same ones over and over and over. And you think, wow, we're the only ones that can solve this and we have to be here because we just can't get these things solved. And so there's all these frustrations around people and processes. And you go out and you feel like you've learned everything and you bring it back to the company. It doesn't work.
What kind of company was this that you got involved with?
It was a specialty industrial and defense coatings. So paint.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I got you.
We had some things that no one else in the world had, which is pretty cool for a small privately held business in Niles, Michigan, just over the border from Indiana. So we go on, I became operational strategic, really kind of got involved in really every aspect of the business. We've kind of flipped every department over a couple of years, really me and ended up being our CFO. Ultimately, I became CEO. We discovered EOS
Mm-hmm.
and implemented it. And then over about a 2-year span, we nearly doubled the value of the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
We felt that, it's funny, the book Traction, we felt that traction. There was this feeling of we actually know what's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
We felt like we were actually getting things done. Those meetings with the leadership team, we were actually looking forward to because we would get on the same page, talk about the most important things. So we did that. And ultimately, we became so valuable, we ended up
Mm-hmm.
selling the company.
So going back to when you discovered EOS, what kind of pain was going on? I suspect that there was pain, pain generally precedes change. And so what kind of pain points, what was going on besides the time warp meetings, but what was going on in the company? I mean, that caused you to seek out something else, something outside of yourselves to learn how to run the company better.
Yeah. So there could be a number of reasons why it's attractive. For us, it was actually, we had come off of like 2 years in a row having some of our best years we've ever had. But
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
we did that and we still didn't really feel good about it. So it
Interesting.
was this feeling that I don't know that we put our finger on it at the time, but it was really that we're not hitting our potential. We could be doing more.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is great. Yeah, we're making some money, but this could be just better. And so I
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing in my peer groups, similar to you're mentioning, you're hearing about it all the time. I was seeing
Yeah.
that the best companies in my peer groups were running on EOS.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have this learner's mentality that I want to do that thing once I hear about it,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't look away, right? I want to do it. And so it was really that, and that we said, look, we're going to keep getting the same results unless we do something different.
Sure. Sure. I think it's interesting, because again, in my coaching career, in my consulting career, I have had numerous phone calls where somebody says, "I think something's wrong. I just don't know what it is." It's that it just doesn't, to your point, it just doesn't feel right. Something's missing. Something's not, and they could be profitable. They could be dying. I mean, who knows? But just something doesn't feel right, and they can't put their finger on what that is.
So a lot of times in EOS, we call that hitting the ceiling.
Okay.
So you're
Okay.
stuck, you're frustrated, you can't figure out how to break through, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of companies, they grow. Perhaps you start a business and in the first 3 years, you're flying high. Things are just happening, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
growing like
Mm-hmm.
crazy. And then all of a sudden, smack, you hit some ceiling. And there's a number of tools that we teach to get through that. But it is that feeling that you're stuck, you're frustrated, you can't figure out what it is. A lot of times in that scenario, leaders are complaining about their people because they think, well, they're just not getting the stuff
We
done. We
just
don't
don't
have
have
the
the
right
right
people.
people in place. Yeah, sure.
And so it's, of
Sure.
course, there's a lot which we could dig into.
And this was a privately held business, wasn't it?
That's right.
Privately
Yep.
held company, family business and stuff. And you were brought, well, you kind of worked through those family things. Now, did the family still hold the stock? If you don't mind me asking, they still hold the stock, as you and the CFO were running the organization?
Yeah, that's right. So the owners ended up in board seats.
Okay.
Is where they ended
Yeah.
before we sold. So family business, and I was an outside,
Gotcha.
not a family
It was the
member.
CFO as well?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So again, you mentioned your peers, that were running EOS. Did they hand you the book? I mean, did they hand you Traction, or did they hand you what the heck is EOS? Or again, how did I don't know if they pushed it on you or if you said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Because I'm not feeling great right now.
So I was hearing about it, and then the guy who was running our peer group became a great mentor of mine over the
Mm-hmm.
years. He actually ended up being on the board of the company running as
Gotcha.
well. So he was actually doing a little bit of, I guess, strategic planning, for lack of a better word, coming in, running
Sure.
a monthly meeting for us.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Mm-hmm.
was running on EOS. And so he was showing us how these meetings would go,
Mm-hmm.
helping us, kind of giving us ideas on some structure. And then he introduced us to an EOS implementer.
Okay. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is, what your role is today. So you sold the company. When you sold the company, did you stay on with the company for a little while, or is it you sold and you're gone?
I stayed on for about 4 months.
Okay.
So helped transition in new management. I hired a coach, really
Mm-hmm.
figure out what do I do now that I'm grown up.
Yeah. What's your next step in life? Yeah. Sure.
And that was a really interesting time because it really took me about a year to figure it out with a coach, really
Mm-hmm.
digging in deep. Yeah, so we've mentioned coaching several times. It feels like
Yeah.
already it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And so I was working with another company, helping them buy a company, which was their first acquisition they'd ever done,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
helping with some ownership transition, some leadership, some structure, while kind of figuring this out. What is it that I'm going to do? And so really with my coach looking back over the nearly decade that I was running this business, what I found that I was doing and loved doing was coaching the owners and leadership team, really to
Yeah.
see a potential they just didn't know existed,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then helping them get there. So both from a business valuation standpoint, from some of the things that we did that company had just never done before,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe we were scared to do, to right the CFO that I've already mentioned, I hired her as an accountant, and I
Okay.
told her from day one, I want to make you so good that you leave us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she's now high-powered CFO in the area. And so maybe she saw it, and maybe she had that plan, but just helping people get there is just I just love.
That is the mark, in my opinion. That's the mark of a really great coach is that you see that potential and you say, I want to help you get so good that you leave me in the dust. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of humility in that. There's a lot of really kind of basic core values, that allow coaches to do that. I know I struggle with some managers, that I work with that have a very difficult time developing people because it's like, well, why develop them? Because they're just going to leave me, or just go on. And I try to help them understand or get to a point where, they can see that the effort is their responsibility. The outcome is not their responsibility. And I think that that's sometimes a tough hurdle for people, to look at, especially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Two thoughts on that. One
Yeah.
is I remember this was like I feel like 10 years ago. I saw on LinkedIn, just the little pictures they have with words on them.
Yeah.
And it said something like the CFO says to the CEO, "What if we train all these people and spend all this money and they leave?"
Yeah.
CEO says, "What if we don't and they stay?"
Right, right. Yeah, it's kind of a little riff on the old Zig Ziglar. He talked about that. That was a big thing. And you see a lot of different, thought leaders say that. But yeah, that's one of those great points, is that development and investing in people, there's a lot of fear associated with it. They're going to go elsewhere, but got to try to put that aside. And again, if you're really wanting to be, a coach, or I think sometimes the term's used, servant style leader,
Mhm.
is that you're really trying to develop people to a point.
So the second piece of that is, when I challenge myself, when I was in business, I would say, so what would be the reason why I wouldn't then?
Yeah.
And I can't find an answer that's not purely being selfish.
Right.
And so I think if we really realize that and look at ourselves, we really want that. So if you have
Yeah.
the core values, right, that most companies will say they have, we
Mhm.
wouldn't say that we'd want to do that.
Right. Absolutely.
That's hard to look away
Absolutely.
from.
Yeah, for sure. And it happens all the time,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes you need a little reality check to kind of bring you back to center. So you're coaching. Okay. So again, this is your year of discovery. What am I doing with my life here?
Yeah.
And you're helping this company. And did you bring in some of the things from EOS to help you with this company, or what was
Yeah.
that process?
Yeah. I mean, it's like with maybe anything. You're always bringing your experience, always bringing the tools you have to
Hmm.
try to make things better. We weren't running on EOS, but I kind of placed some of those pieces in. It
Hmm.
was really one of the big projects was buying this company, and so it just came off of selling,
Hmm.
and that was really a huge focus of mine. We had actually gone through 3 full sets of diligence before we sold.
Hmm.
2 of those were with locally held companies, so I
Hmm.
had a pretty good set of experience doing that. And so just flipping that to the buy side that was really my focus. That
Yeah.
answers your
Yeah,
question.
yeah, absolutely. No, I was just kind of curious, because now EOS is a huge part of your life. So I'm bridging the gap here somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, somehow you got from I was a person who was running EOS and running a business and working. How did you become, really an implementer and really a evangelizer of the EOS way?
Yeah, it's interesting. During that time, of course, I spent a lot of time running a company. So you start working on with a coach and really digging deep, and you have to get vulnerable if you really want to grow.
Hmm.
And so, I got to the point where I said, okay, here's some options. But, I have this thought creeping in my head that maybe I don't run a company anymore. And so that's just scary, right?
Yeah.
Even from like a societal pressure standpoint, this isn't the path. The path is always you keep going up and up and bigger and bigger. So, right, having the thought and then saying it out loud to someone,
Hmm.
that's scary.
Sure.
And then deciding, no, 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 that's actually what I'm going to do, to the point then where you pull the trigger and actually jump off the cliff. So I say this was, about a year that it took me to do that,
Hmm.
because it's just hard. Now I look back and there are people that whether it's that I coach them or just people that I know, friends of mine that are going through similar things. And I tell them, like, you will get a year down the road and you will cannot imagine you would be doing anything else. And so
Hmm.
I get it that it's really hard to get to that point where you're going to do something completely different that you've ever done.
With EOS, again, from a structural standpoint, did you join staff? Did you actually work directly for them? Or how does that work? Or how did that work for you?
Yeah, so we are all our own franchisees. So
Okay.
you buy in and you're on your own. You get training and support. There are no set territories.
Hmm.
So you go out to wherever your backyard is, wherever your network is, and you sit in all of the seats and you go out and sell and then you hop in the operations seat and then you hop in the finance seat.
Yep.
So that's challenging. I tell
Well,
people
it's running
uh,
your own business again. I mean,
it is.
that's really, it's running your own business. Coaching
It
is
is.
a business.
It's being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I tell people it is amazing. I can't imagine doing anything else.
Hmm.
And also, I realize that this would be terrible for a lot of people.
Well,
They-
for sure. For sure. I mean, I think about, what I do for a living. I mean, not a lot of people want to do this, especially
yeah,
I got stuck in the Denver airport the other night, I had to sleep on the floor. I'm like, not a lot of other people would handle this very well. I didn't handle it very well. So there's not a lot of people that want to put up with some of this stuff. So, again, we've thrown out the EOS acronym enough times. Let's get into what is EOS. I mean, where did it come from? And, how do you use it today, from a practical standpoint?
yeah. So stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. So that's EOS.
Got it.
I often say it so fast that people think it's EOS.
Yeah, 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 totally.
Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a complete set of simple practical tools. Oftentimes, I'll describe this as right, all of those tools, those things that maybe are missing from a lot of the great books, whether Lencioni, Jim Collins, right? We read Good to Great,
Yeah,
and we think, yeah, right people, right seats. Absolutely, like it's so inspiring from that book. And then what happens is five of us on a leadership team may read that and go apply it differently.
right, right.
So EOS creates the tools from a lot of those books, and we acknowledge that a lot of them from that. Gino
Mm-hmm.
Wickman, who created EOS, knows all those guys and drew inspiration, and we acknowledge that. So we apply those things same way. And so what Gino Wickman wanted to do is he wanted to give the everyday entrepreneur leader tools that could make them truly great without creating a bunch of bureaucracy, red tape.
Mm-hmm.
So these are simple and practical, right? Simple, but
Mm-hmm.
not to be confused with easy,
Right, for sure, for sure.
right? It's like every self-help and business book that I've ever read. I get to the end of it and I think, well, I guess what I don't think is I can't understand why that would be successful, why that would work. It's always,
Mm.
well, duh, but am I doing it? No,
No, yeah, no,
because
I'm not.
it's hard and it takes discipline and accountability.
Right, right.
So this is a simple set of practical tools, really timeless things.
So what kind of, so if you wouldn't mind me just getting a little more granular, what
Sure.
kinds of things? I mean, I've heard a lot of the expressions from, the clients and people I've worked with, rocks and,
Yeah,
and all these little things. So if you could just tell me about a couple tools, that tend to come from this EOS practice.
sure. When we're working with our clients, we try to get vision, traction, and healthy. So
Okay.
vision is getting everyone 100% on the same page with where you're going, how you plan to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Tractions, discipline, focus, and accountability. So everywhere you go, you see people executing on that vision. And
Mm-hmm.
healthy is creating a cohesive, open, honest, right, fun-loving group, people that want to be surrounded by each other. So,
Okay.
right, from a vision standpoint, tool we use is just we answer 8 questions. That becomes our vision. So this isn't a 200-page strategic plan. It's
Right.
just a 2-page document that says, what are your core values? What's your core focus? Right? So what do you love to do and you're best at?
Mm-hmm.
What's your 10-year target? Right? Where are you going long term? Your marketing strategy, 3-year picture so we can see in our mind's eye, start to visualize what it has to look like down the road.
Mm-hmm.
What do we need to do in a year from now? What are our quarterly rocks? Right? What are the most important things this quarter? We can dig into those.
Mm-hmm.
And then just simply writing down our issues. We have so many issues in companies. And I talk with clients and they say, wow, geez, we don't know what our issues are. Like you have them all, you have so many, dealing with them day in and day out. There's therapy in getting them down on paper. So that's the eight questions. That's the tool we
Right.
use for vision. For
Okay.
say, let's say from a traction standpoint,
Yeah.
rocks are our quarterly priorities. They're the most important thing
Okay.
we need to get done this quarter.
Okay.
Everybody thinks, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been in business setting goals. I
Yeah.
know how to set goals. And the way that we do it is just different. That
Mm-hmm.
you have people that have worked a long, successful career, and we go through our first set of rocks, and they're like, "Wow, I just set these wrong." The way that we do this is just different
Mm-hmm.
because we are very specific about what does done look like.
Mm-hmm.
So rocks would be it's how we gain traction, right? This is another one of the
Gotcha.
things that you hear from companies when they're frustrated, right? We talked about earlier that like hitting the ceiling. We're just not getting stuff done, right? Because most companies have vision, right? They have
Yeah.
a product, they're in the right market, they're just not getting stuff done. And
Yeah.
part of that is it's this hamster wheel that we kind of get on, right? A lot of good people doing great work, but we don't feel like we're going anywhere. If you're cutting a road through the Amazon, you could have the most efficient cutters. If somebody's not climbing the tree once in a while and looking out, like you're going in a zigzag. And so
Right.
with the most efficient people doing the most efficient work, but it's not the right work.
Yeah.
And so that's really the simple part of this is we just get together and we decide, okay, where we're going to get to our 1 year plan. What are the most important things we need to do this quarter?
Mm-hmm. So obviously you've worked with several different clients, but one distribution client that you and I have talked about in the past. Can you kind of give an idea of kind of what you found and then ultimately where it led?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes out to me here is another tool that we use is called the accountability chart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's how we create corporate structure and looks similar to an organizational chart, but we're much more specific about, we have two roles that really don't exist on an org chart, which is a visionary and integrator.
Okay.
The visionary, they're the person at 30,000 feet. They're coming up with ideas.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking about strategy and really care about culture, and they're kind of defining what that culture should look like. Whereas the integrator is the person that's making things happen day to day. They're
Mm-hmm.
executing
Mm-hmm.
on that plan and vision and ultimately accountable for that vision being executed on and the plan
Okay.
happening. Right. So oftentimes like P&L is one of their accountabilities.
Okay.
The leadership team reports to that integrator.
Okay. Okay.
So in this case of the distributor,
Yeah.
the thing that really jumped out was they, of course, didn't have that structure in place because they weren't on EOS. One of the owners is a company that has two owners that are brothers running the
Mm-hmm.
company.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was in the operations seat, co-presidents, one op in the operations seat. And what we did and saw when we went through this process was, oh, that guy was actually the visionary.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
work that he really loved doing was actually up creating ideas, thinking. And when we figured that out, and he figured that out, and the team allowed him to do that, he said, "You guys are you're allowing me to be myself." And so it was
Right.
this revelation that I don't have to just be in those weeds and doing that work that I don't love. And actually, from the success of the company, we need that person to do that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, I think in society, you have to put the hours in. I work 60 hours. I did a bunch of work. Right? You have to see the tangible work that you did. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much work that needs to be done that's seemingly not tangible. So,
Gotcha.
maybe from like a working genius standpoint, I'm not sure exactly where they land. I think they're working on it, but there's tenacity,
Mm-hmm.
which is doing the details and getting things across the finish line. And that frustrates people. So, right, let's get you in the where you have the skills, abilities, balance, desire to be great. So that's one of the the key findings that we had.
Got it.
But we also took the sales leader and he became the integrator.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Something that we wouldn't have imagined happening because if we did, we would have done it
It's
before.
interesting because I do know the person and I'm like, I can see that. I can absolutely see that. And, I think one of the things that you mentioned, just accountability. I mean, this was kind of a big thing. And I think that is lacking in most of a lot of the companies that I work with, especially the ones that reach out for help. There is a lack of accountability. It's not that they don't want to be accountable to something. They just don't know how to be accountable to something. And I think that's where this structure makes it it's easy to follow. As you said, simple, but not easy to implement. But it's logical. It makes sense when you explain it.
Yeah. So both from that accountability chart, being clear
Mm-hmm.
about what are the things that I'm accountable for. When we do that, we
Mm-hmm.
write 5 bullets next to each seat on the accountability chart. Right. So you can imagine an org chart. Each box has 5 bullets next to it. So it actually says what they do. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not titles because like the title COO, I don't know if you're a plant manager as a COO or if you're running the business. And
Right.
so they're
Right.
confusing. And so when
Mm-hmm.
we actually say, no, these are the things. If I'm a CFO and it's HR and IT is underneath me, right? Those are 2 of my 5 roles. Well, when it's very clear, I don't know if I want that. HR and IT, that doesn't fit me. Right. And so
Right.
when
Right.
we create this, we create it from a structure first perspective.
Yeah.
And then we put people in. So you point about accountability though, it's there on the accountability chart.
Mm-hmm.
Here are the things I'm accountable for. And then we're getting together again, right, with those rocks and setting, here are our top priorities. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
hold ourselves accountable to it.
Yeah. So I see this, and we've kind of spoken about a lot of executive leadership, CFO, CEO, CEO, et cetera. Now, does this drill down to the department heads? So let's say that I've got a purchasing manager or sales manager or any of the department leadership. How do we drill down to those folks?
Yeah. So all of this work is done at the leadership team level first.
Okay.
And then what we find is as goes the leadership team, so goes the rest of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I come in, I work with the leadership team. We don't roll any of this stuff out until they have, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
One of the things we do is a specific weekly meeting agenda. It's called the level 10 meeting.
Yes. I've heard that expression. Yes.
And so we don't teach that the first full day, and the leadership team goes out and they start running theirs. I don't want them to go run their own meetings with their departments yet, because I want them to master those first, right? So when they're teaching it, we've kind of gotten all of the impurities and imperfections out, the hiccups.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, all of this gets rolled down. So we want all of these tools all the way to be rolled out all the way to the front line. So every department, every team has a meeting, right? They're in the right meeting pulse, scorecards going through the agenda. They've got rocks all the way, scaled the right way, of course.
Yeah.
The rocks that are in a leadership team have to be different than what the front lines have.
Yeah, I would agree.
When I think about that, even from maybe like a scorecard perspective, which we're tracking 5 to 15 metrics on a weekly basis. As you think, everyone, this is rolled out to everyone. Yeah, everyone should have one. And I think about Lencioni's 3 Signs of a Miserable Job book. In that, Lencioni always tells these fictional stories, but he's talking about this Italian restaurant where there's a guy at a drive-through. There's a drive-through at the Italian restaurant, and he's giving everyone a measurable because immeasurability is one of the signs of a miserable job. If you don't objectively know that you're doing a good job, this isn't somebody coming patting you on the back every week saying, hey, you're doing great. No, objectively, you need to know.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're doing this. And so you think, okay, well, what could the drive-through window guy, what could his measurable be? It was just get 10 smiles.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. So scaled the right way. That's different than how many calls am I making from a sales perspective? It's different than how much revenue is coming in the door. And so all these have to be scaled the right way, but they're still important to the person's job.
Yeah.
And they serve the purpose.
Gotcha. Okay. You've worked with different clients, not necessarily, I think this distribution one's about a year into it or something of that nature. Maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You've seen some other ones that maybe have had a little longer run. What are some of the big outcomes, kind of the big wins out of here? I've got a couple, the people have shared with me, but I'm curious as to what you've seen.
Yeah, it's interesting that oftentimes that question comes at the beginning of the process when people are deciding to do this. Well, tell me what the results are.
Yeah, what does done look like, or what is the end result? What am I paying for here?
Tell me how much we're going to grow.
Yeah,
and so we shy away from giving concrete results on that because what we say is, with this, you get everything that you want from the business. Some people want more time with their family. Right?
Yeah,
they want sanity. Some people want to be able to pass it to the next generation and feel comfortable that there's a process in place to do that, and that there's accountability and there's the right people. Some people want to grow. And so I've kind of seen all of that. Maybe when I pull it all together, I have a client that actually was on EOS for about a year and a half, and then they were doing it on their own for about 2 years, and then they came back. It's another client of mine. They weren't with me before. And I think the thing when I think about them, they're a kind of a startup tech company, about 40 people, rapidly growing as you would in that. So they're growing, and that's great from a revenue standpoint. But the thing I really see is it's just the glue that holds it together. They know what's important. They're talking about the right stuff. The right things are on the radar, right? And so they were just kind of, it was not like that. You just don't have that control. One of the things I think that we hear from people, whether it's when they're hitting the ceiling or they're just frustrated before they come to us, is they feel like they don't have control of the business. And so you see this with leadership teams that they say, oh yeah, this is great. We need EOS, but we'd really have to commit to doing this. And I'm looking around thinking, well, you're the ones that would decide that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Really? We'd really have to do that. Well, no kidding. Really? Imagine that.
But it's that feeling that you don't have control. And I think we see this a lot in personal lives as well, right? Whether it's the diet I want to do, the exercise, I want to read books, I want to gain this skill, I want to learn to play guitar. People say, oh yeah, I want to do that. I wish I could do that. As if they're not the only one. Right? They are the one that would decide to do that.
They are the barrier. They are the catalyst.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
But it's this feeling that you don't have control, right? That the business is like this van driving down the road, that like the windows are flapping, the doors are flapping open and back, and you just want to jump in just to feel like somebody's driving it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so EOS helps you get that control.
Hmm.
And so that's maybe generalized answer and not specific.
Yeah.
I mean, I have clients that have doubled in sales and
Right.
just became happier people.
Yeah, I mean, the one, a gentleman shared with me a while back, that he was honestly able to, reduce his working hours, to about half, he could run the company on 25 hours a week. And, because it became so much more efficient. And the thing that he really valued was that, as you mentioned earlier, the ability to spend time with his family as they were, growing up and realize that, this is something, or I know others that have actually, decided to start another company over here on the, and because this was running so efficiently and so well, and again, you weren't wasting a lot of time trying to figure out how to run it, that you could go and apply your skills elsewhere. And maybe as volunteer work, whatever it was. But I just thought that was a really interesting, tangible outcome that had been shared with me in the past.
Yeah, I love it.
One thing you and I had talked about before was, kind of why you do this. What is the reward of, besides monetary? Monetary, look, we can all figure out how to go make money. That's not, in my opinion, I'm sorry. I should clarify that is not the be all end all, at least for me. But what do you get out of going and seeing these companies and implementing something or putting something in place that truly changes not only the nature of the company, but the satisfaction of the leadership team, the owners, even the associates, in the company? What do you get out of that?
Some of that is maybe pull this back to really personalize it for me is that I
Yeah.
love learning, love connecting with people, and
Hmm.
then I love sharing the things that I've learned to help those people solve their problems.
Yeah.
That's just gold for me.
Yeah.
And I've also, lived what my clients are living.
Hmm.
So one, I want to share this stuff so that people can make their lives better.
Hmm.
And also like show them that there's a better way. You don't
Yeah.
have to be miserable. Everybody thinks that, oh no, yep, I work all these hours. It can't be fun. This is just it, right? And I want to show them that there's a different way
Yeah.
and that you can gain, sanity back. You can do work that you love. And one of the things we haven't talked about in all of this is ultimately we want to lead people to the EOS life.
Hmm.
And that's doing what you love with people you love, making a huge difference,
Hmm.
being compensated appropriately, having time for other passions.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could say no to that.
Right. Right. No, it sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
It sounds great. And so people just don't believe that that can happen, right? They think,
Hmm.
nope, we just can't do it. So for me, I've really always been a coach and maximizer too in my personal and professional life. So, whether it's coaching my daughter's fifth grade basketball right now and seeing the progress that they make,
Hmm.
there's just this feeling that you get. It's like I relate it back to like when my first child started walking, or maybe
Yeah.
all of them. You get this
Yeah.
feeling like you are so proud.
Right.
Like you helped create this. You're doing this, but it's not you, right? You're not living it, it's them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know that I can completely put my finger on that, what that is, but maybe just back to the earlier in the conversation about the work that I did running a business and seeing that potential and helping people get there. I
Yeah.
have a lot of crazy ideas time to time. And like, I think when you're out on your own and talking to people all the time, more and more just come up. And I think, oh man, do I want to own another business someday where it's like a manufacturer,
Yeah.
like I was working in? And the reality is, I don't think I really want to. I don't want to do that for me. If I was to do that, I would want to do it to have a leadership team, let them do it the right way.
Yeah.
So for other people, I'm not sure how to completely put that because I don't necessarily want to pull that back on necessarily core values of mine, but although it's probably what it is, I kind of have
Yeah.
some core tenets in my life, and helping others is one of them.
Well, I think that, for me, it was in my early 30s where I kind of figured out that actually this is what I'm supposed to do. And, getting, kind of tremendous satisfaction out of working with others, seeing the light bulb go on and things of that nature. And I think, maybe it comes back to core value, maybe just kind of your makeup, who you are and where you want to go. But yeah, I mean, it is really satisfying. I love the work. And I think that honestly, if you think about, implementing a system like EOS, then others can have that opportunity to dabble in our coaching world a little bit and see if what they think and if they like this world. And Look, there's plenty of opportunities to, again, mentor, advise, and help people get to their logical destination. So, how do people find you? Now, you said that you don't really have any geographical boundaries, but generally speaking, where do you like to play?
Yeah, so I'm typically in Indiana, Illinois, southwestern Michigan.
Gotcha.
That's
Okay,
mostly where I'm at.
good. And how does somebody find you?
Of course, LinkedIn.
Oh, well, I'll make sure that we put it in the show notes. So,
Right.
and yeah.
And if you just search EOS Charlton, I'm the only one.
Okay. Well, good. Well, no, and again, I'm hoping that, others or people reach out to you. I've heard so much about this, Charlton. It's just been, it's just one of those things that I knew I had to, learn a little bit more. Somebody gave me, what the heck is EOS? In fact, I'm looking at it on the bookshelf over here. Gave it to me, a number of years ago. And when people get into it, they really get into it. I mean, it's a big deal for many, many companies. As I said, not a couple of weeks goes by before, without somebody saying this or mentioning that, they're on this journey. So now, fascinating. Hey, man, thank you for taking the time, to spend with me and to share with the listeners a little bit more about there's kind of a way out of the rut.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
All right. Take care. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Impostor Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.